Hello everyone. Welcome to the next in the series of review quiz for the Biology Theory 201 public exam course. In this clip, we'll be looking at various technologies that have been developed to allow for better access, better understanding of how it is that the nervous system functions. Early knowledge of the brain function came from studying the brains of people with brain disease or brain injury. We know that brain damage will be attributed, causing various symptoms such as loss of particular body function or change in behavior. Scientists believed that the area of the brain which was abnormal must control whatever body function was changed. Scientists were, however, reluctant to study the human brain. Primarily, this is due to ethical reasons in the early days of brain study. For obvious reasons, they didn't want to start probing healthy human brains. Technologies have been developed since which have made this task somewhat easier and certainly allow for a greater understanding of how it is that the brain and the nervous system functions. One of the first of these was the EEG, or electroencephalograph. This procedure was developed in 1924 by Dr. Hans Borger. What an EEG does is it measures the electrical activity of the functioning brain and allows doctors to diagnose disorders such as epilepsy and locate brain tumors. It's also used during sleep to study sleeping disorders. In essence, what an EEG is doing is it is graphing the electrical activity of a person's brain. How this is done is that a series of wires are located underneath the skin. Just put an eye on this person. And these wires pick up and measure the electrical signals. So these wires are fed over, again, located at various spots in the skin directly underneath the person's skull. A whole bunch of them. The result being is that a graph is generated which indicates and measures the electrical activity. This electrical activity pulses and changes based on the task that a person was experiencing. Depending on what the person is doing, various leads, various probes will actually pick up an electrical signal. If you know where these probes are located and when they are receiving electricity versus when they are not, you can then get an idea of what part of the brain causes various functions to occur. It was also able to actually stimulate the brain during surgery. If you know what part of the brain is being stimulated and what's being reported, the person can actually identify what's going on. The brain has no pain receptors, so surgery can be performed with anesthesia while the person is fully awake. If the person reports smelling burnt toast when a certain part of the brain is stimulated, you know that's the part of the brain that caused that sensation. That's the part of the brain that causes for the account of smell, and so on. CAT scans provide and allow for a series of X-rays to create a three-dimensional picture of what the brain looks like. More accurately, Positron emission tomography scans identify which part of the brain is most active. When a subject performs certain tasks, it gives an idea of activity. MRI scans, a little more accurate, but they operate similar to a CAT scan, and they provide much more detailed imagery and other soft tissues of the body. Now, when brain injuries occur, it's important that they be treated and treated effectively. One of the more common brain injuries is a stroke. A stroke is caused by a lack of oxygen to a part of the brain, usually caused by a blood clot. This causes a portion of the brain to die. To treat this, clot-busting drugs had to be given to a patient within 3 hours, but it may cause life-threatening bleeding in the brain. Aspirin may be prescribed to reduce the thickness of platelets and thus reduce the chance of a clot forming, but there are side effects to it. The problem is that if a stroke is caused by an aneurysm, a broken blood vessel, and blood has been thinned by aspirin, the bleeding can indeed become worse. Certainly, there is no evidence to suggest that daily aspirin will prevent strokes. It certainly hasn't been given the same sign-off by doctors as it pertains to heart disease. As for spinal cord injuries, these are very difficult to treat. Fairly recently, there has been a gene identified that inhibits spinal regeneration, that being no-go. Now, this gene produces a protein that prevents neurons of the central nervous system from regenerating. The isolated protein is believed to prevent wild, uncontrollable growth of tissue. Researchers hope that this will lead to drug therapies and will lead to damaged central nervous system tissue to be able to regenerate. We know that 1,000 neurons might be created each day, even the brains of people in their 50s and 70s. These new nerve cells do not arise from mitosis, but a reserve of embryonic stem cells. These are found in some parts of the brain, but do not form into specialized cells during brain development. Similar cells have been found in bone marrow, and they're responsible for a wide variety of blood cells found in the body. An example of a question that has appeared on this section in previous exam is as follows. Which medical technology most likely to be used to diagnose a patient suspected of a cancerous tumor on their lung? Again, a cancerous tumor. An EEG is isolated to electrical signals. An EKG, while not discussed in this unit, deals with heart rhythms. An MRI or a CAT scan, both will be acceptable. Both provide detailed imagery. However, the most common one, most likely used one, would indeed be a CAT scan. An MRI provides an accurate picture, but the most likely one would be the CAT scan. Thank you very much for your time and your patience, and I hope this clip was helpful for you.